What's up everybody, my name is Galson Anthony, the best to ever do it of 8-track pictures, and I am back. This time it is the clash of the titans, Sony versus Canon. Who's gonna win? But before we get straight into it, disclaimer. Alright, so I've been going through quite a few comments with hecklers or trollers over the internet about how I should or should not be doing things, but more in a negative space. Now I want you to understand, this is my personal opinion on these cameras. My personal opinion, all right? My being me, personal being personal, but you get it. Introducing the cameras that I battled today. On the left-hand corner, we have the 1,530 gram full frame 460p that is cropped at 135, priced at $86,000 in 2020. The EF mount weather seal super sturdy flagship heavyweight DSLR. Give it up for the Canon 1Dxii Mark II. And on the right, ready to fight, we have the 945 gram lightweight but definitely no slouch, packing at full frame 430p, priced at $37,000 in 2020. Give it up for E-mount slick looking mirrorless camera, Sony A7iii. Sony A7iii, are you ready for battle? Canon 1Dxii Mark II, are you ready for battle? Okay, it's round one. And fight! Enough with the clowning, and now to the seriousness. I want to discuss a few things about this camera, which is similarities and differences. But first I want to start with the differences. The obvious part is they are two different sizes. The Canon being twice the size of the A7 III, probably screaming all size matters, but the A7 III is 2/3 the weight of the Canon Mark III. Each of them have the disadvantage and advantage of being the sizes that they are. Another difference between these two cameras are the monitors. The monitor on the Sony seems slightly bigger than that of the Canon. I did not measure it, do not quote me on this one, but it's what I can see. However, the Canon has a brighter nit. Don't quote me on that one again, but in sunlight, in my experience, I can see much better on the Canon than I can on the Sony. The Sony has the advantage of the fact that it has an articulating screen, so when shooting in weird little angles, it is better to see the screen as opposed to the Canon. Since the screen is just stuck to the body and does not move, it makes it a lot harder to see on the screen. The final difference I'm going to mention between these two are the media they record on. For example, the 1Dxii has a CFast and the CF 2.0, which is particularly a bit more expensive than that of the A7 III. The A7 III has two cards, SD cards, that you can insert. It is a much more affordable option between the two, so it depends which one you like. These two have a plethora in common, actually more than they even have differences, particularly in the specifications. So what I did was actually take them for a test shoot to see these similarities. For each camera, I set them at 4K 24p, put native lenses on them, Tamron, and this what came out. I noticed as soon as I hit the record is that the 1Dxii actually has a 1.3 crop, which was a little bit annoying when I was doing this test. But amongst the cameras, what I'm going to test is dynamic range, autofocus, sharpness, and color science. And I'll give you a pointer of which camera did better in which category. And in each category, I'm gonna let you know who I think took the points. With dynamic range, clearly here it seems that Sony is particularly the winner. If you actually look in the highlights there, and a little bit in the shadows, Sony kills this one. With the autofocus, I had so much faith in Sony performing very, very well. And although it did, it could not match the long history of good autofocus that Canon have. So this one goes to the 1Dxii. Sharpness sharpness was a little bit tricky for me because as I was recording, I noticed that the Sony actually has a wider field of view. To make it similar, I had to actually crop in a little bit just so that it can match that of the Canon. I thought it would lose its sharpness, but it actually stacked up very well and actually still looked better than that of the Canon. So definitely sharpness goes to the Sony. When it comes to color science, it's a no-brainer. Canon is way ahead of the competition. However, I do feel like Sony is not too far behind, but when it comes to skin tones, Canon does it. Canon understands skin tones better than all the cameras in the market from my experience thus far. So that point goes to Canon. So from where we stand, it seems that these two are evenly stacked up. And even if one wins over the other, it is definitely not by a landslide. So now I want to discuss the things I like and dislike about these two cameras. Earlier on I mentioned size, and when it comes to size, I shoot handheld, so I prefer the Canon. The reason being is all my fingers are gripped onto the camera, and that feels a lot more comfortable when I'm shooting handheld. There's gonna be a lot less shake because the weight is perfect for me, as opposed to the A7 III. There's always like a little finger, like, this is not comfortable, and it feels like right hand a little heavy. I don't like that very much because I get a lot of shaky shots and they're usually quite skewed. So for that, I would go with the Canon. But when it comes down to gimbal work, I guess I'll have to give it to the Sony because the Sony's a lot lighter. Holding this on the gimbal is a nightmare for hours. When it comes to the monitor, I think I prefer the Sony because the articulating screen works out a lot better. I mean, if you're shooting with an articulated screen as opposed to something flat, when you're using a gimbal or maybe you want to do low angle shots, it will work out a lot better than that of the Canon. So I'd have to go with the Sony when it comes to screen. When it comes to ISO range, I have to side with Sony A7 III. The reason being is not only because of its low light monstrousness, but also because that the ISO starts at 50. The Canon 1Dxii starts at 100. I generally shoot f1.4, so in bright daylight, sometimes I want an extra stop downwards of the ISO, so 50 is a good start for me. That's why I prefer this one. When it comes down to the low light capabilities, that's what Sony is known for, so it is past the discussion right now. Low light monster goes to the Sony A7 III. Now the golden question, which camera is perfect for you to buy? For me, it's a no-brainer. I would go with the 1DX Mark II. And again, I said for me, it is a no-brainer. The reasons are simple. The 1DX is a workhorse. I can work at least 4 days a week, 8 hours every day, and knowing that this camera will never let me down. It is sturdy, weather sealed, and very reliable. However, it is quite expensive. 80,000 Rand is a bit heavy. It is 50,000 Rand more than this. 50,000 Rand is a South African currency for those that are watching it outside South Africa. This is a lot cheaper, all right? So it's more affordable. You could buy 2 of these with the price of this and get a lens. However, I'm not sure about reliability. Some may say it's reliable, but I don't know. It might not be as much as a workhorse as the Canon. So for me, I would go with the Canon, but if you are budget conscious but still want to pack the same punch that the Canon does and in some instances beat the Canon, then definitely the Sony is the one to go for. Although I've said this a couple times before, I'm gonna say it one last time. These are my opinions, my experience in my world, and therefore I come up to my conclusions of which camera is better for me. It is up to you to decide what works for you. On that note, I want you to subscribe to my channel and don't forget to hit the notification buttons as well as follow me on Instagram and Facebook, Galston.Anthony. And until next time,